Hello, everyone. I'm Haley Allen. I am the Director of Family Ministry at St. Thomas Anglican Church. Joining me today is Beth Dean. Beth is a licensed clinical social worker and practicing therapist at Stonegate Counseling Associates in Athens. On your bio on Stonegate's website, you have a lot of training, a lot of experience in a lot of different areas, and it would take me a while to read through everything. So for us today, we're just going to touch on your work with EMDR, the Enneagram, internal family systems, and attachment theory. Beth is also a wife and mother of 3 young girls. When I decided to reach out to you, the first motivation I had was just that therapy is something that has helped me personally so much. It's completely changed my life and many people that I love. But and it's something that we at St. Thomas as a staff value highly and that we talk about regularly. We talk about how can we support people in the church? How can we promote this? How can we show people like this is something that's really important to us? But we all agree there's a lot of misunderstanding around what a good practice can look like. What do you think are some of the biggest hangups that people have had before they have come to see you?
It's been striking to me how it can be kind of a hot button, this idea of Christian counseling. There's a lot of variety with that. So this is a Christian practice. I definitely, ascribe to Christian beliefs,
Mhm.
but we don't necessarily force that on anybody.
Right,
People don't have to come in the door, having the exact same belief system. And
right.
there's room for growth and curiosity. So that's been something that I've noticed that's been very damaging, maybe even levels of spiritual abuse and judgy questions. So some people they come in here to repair from that, to recover from that. Anytime there's been a therapist that's given people too strong of directives that's been unhelpful, then they'll come and repair from that too. Or if a therapist is operating in a topic that they're not really equipped for, that can be very damaging as well. So, but I think most people have had positive experiences with counselors. There is some ramp up where I educate them about how we operate in here. There is some time to do that too, of how this can be different.
Yeah.
Um, and then too, making sure, because there is kind of a power difference, like when somebody comes in your office, you definitely want to reiterate like that they have choice, right? That if they want to do this thing, that I'm not the expert on you. So I feel like that's restorative when people know that I have deference, like that they're actually the expert on their own situation, that I don't just like know who they are in a second.
Yeah.
So I think that healthy curiosity helps people know that they're the ones at the reins. But you know, counselors go into the profession for different reasons, and sometimes if a counselor's not seeing their own counselor, it can get kind of odd if they're coming, you know. So I think if counselors are seeing their own person, then you probably have a safe person. Also, clients that have the ability to tell a counselor, I love it when they do this. If they tell me, hey, this thing that you did, I don't really like that. I
Mm,
feel like if they have the stamina, if they have the like courage to say that, like I want to do something different, then I'm really happy about that,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that doesn't happen a ton, but we do want the clients to know that they're the main focus,
Yeah.
right?
Let's start with EMDR. For those people that don't know what is it? How do you use it? And how do you think that it benefits your clients?
With EMDR, it stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's a huge,
Mm.
it took me a few times of reading that and saying it to
Yeah.
memorize it. It's a
Yeah.
huge one. But it's the go-to for the idea for all of these four tools that I use is integration. So with EMDR, the goal is to take the gist of it, the center part of it that stands out is using bilateral stimulation, where people follow your hand or they have tapping, different ways of stimulating two sides of the body to
Yeah.
lower their disturbance around a traumatic memory. And it could be a capital T trauma, or it could be a lower T trauma, like the normal rejections and things we go through as kids.
Yeah.
But what happens is a lot of times people's current stressor is actually related to like a time where they had a trigger at a much younger age. And so they're back in a traumatic event. But so I use EMDR to have people integrate personally. So, like, they're integrating both their physical experience that was stored in their limbic system, they're integrating their cognition and their emotions. So, all three of those things are integrated to where they have an experience that their brain sort of rewrites,
Yeah.
and it makes it integrated, and they feel that truth through their whole self, not just like replacing thoughts, which is usually what Christians do is we'll say, oh, that's a lie that I believe, and I'll replace it with like a truth, like from the Bible.
Hmm.
But sometimes an event is so jarring that it's hard to just replace thoughts, you know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so EMDR, that's probably the most researched and effective tool that I use with folks. It's the most scientifically supported, quickest way. It's really exciting to watch people their brains heal in that way.
Yeah.
But that's the personal one. And then the next tool that I use kind of in tandem with that is
Yeah.
I'm an Enneagram informed therapist.
Yeah.
So that's the more fun piece that people are
Yeah.
familiar with. So the Enneagram informs us of what our answer is in coping with life. And we're all one number, 1 through 9. And it kind of it it shows us what our normal, like, unhealthy and sometimes healthy coping mechanisms are. And then the reason I like it is I notice how we get those coping mechanisms out of the way, and then we can access more of like who we are in Christ. So some of the things can fall away so that we rest in our true identity in Him. So it's funny, I often ask people what their Enneagram number is because it kind of provides some clues to me of how they'll handle EMDR.
Right.
So it kind of lets me know what some of their answers are, their ways of getting away from pain and whatnot. But yeah, Enneagram work, of course, is good for both personal integration, so like an acceptance of who you are, grace towards that, noticing it. And then it's good for the interpersonal integration too. So then I can offer that same grace to my loved ones. And then where it really gets cool is where our Enneagram numbers can come together and affect social change, right? So pulling upon people's strengths and creating movement. And, like, for example, if I work with a 9 who's more passive and peace oriented, as a 3, I can be, I want everybody's success around me as a 3. I'm going to be kind of assertive about that and want that. So I
Mm.
can go borrow a book from this other person and say, here, 9, so you can kind of borrow the strengths from each other.
Yeah.
So that's where Enneagram gets really fun. The other model, internal family systems, and I'll show you an image of, this is a Christianized version of that, is this idea of we have these different components at the table. We have a manager, a firefighter, and an exile within us. And they all are at the table. And then that center heart self is our true self, our spirit-led self that's defined by the fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah.
And so this is another fun tool for identifying, and another integration tool, right? So, and my spirit-led self can offer grace and understanding to the different components of me. And I there's a lot to this, but that's just another tool that I use that I'm noticing people offer more grace to the different sections of themselves. Like a manager wants to avoid pain, so they overadult. And so on a Friday night, like we were talking about, I'll offer my manager a break. Okay,
Yeah.
manager, adulting's too hard. Like, you've done enough. Now we're going to lay down. Now we're going to play and have fun. So, so that's been really fun to have that language for people to integrate more of themselves and to have healthier self-talk and offer
Yeah.
compassion. The other is just a really widely known attachment theory is such a huge portion of what I do too. Noticing how our early attachments are informing our ways of relating as adults now. So that's a very widely recognized theory that people use. So the goal with attachment is that you have a secure attachment to a main caregiver when you're little. So that and that would be shown in research then by if mama left the room, that you would be sad about it, but
Mhm.
then when she came back, you'd be excited to see her. Like you'd be sad for a little while, and then when she returns, you'll be excited and run to her and want to hang out, right? Because you know she'll come back and you know she's good. So secure attachment is always the goal. And so securely attached adults will also exhibit that kind of dance, like they're comfortable, they know people will return, that they're loved, that they're good. And so then there are other ones, there's like an anxious attachment
Mhm.
where the child doesn't know that mama's going to come back and so freaks out longer than necessary when mama leaves. And then there's an avoidant attachment where when mama comes back, the kid doesn't care, right? So when she leaves, he doesn't care. And when she comes back, he doesn't care. So the goal is to kind of identify what were the early experiences of people and then label and non-judgmentally label and try to shift some of those experiences and to understand, okay, how they relate to their spouse, um, and how they can kind of get some of more of their needs met so that they're not operating out of that need so much anymore, so they're not getting yanked around by unresolved issues. But yeah, but the overarching goal for me, when I'm using all these tools is in echoing, like Luke 10:27, where Jesus is saying we want to love the Lord our God with all of our heart and our soul and strength and mind, and then of course our neighbor as ourself. So as I'm focusing on integration like this, um, that's really the goal, like that we're going to offer that love and know who we are, and we also know who Christ is, and we also love appropriately other people. So that's the goal of having all of those things align. It's not going to be perfect here, right? But eventually, it'll it'll all be integrated eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Something I've talked with my own therapist, and I keep thinking about as you were speaking that so often I feel like people they can hear these type of they could even listen to everything that you just said and think, well, I can do this on my own. And it's that
Mhm.
very like egocentric, individualistic Western mindset that, well, I can just go online and take an Enneagram test. Why do I need to go see a therapist? Well, now I know what internal family systems are. I can just tell this to myself. Why should I pay this money every week or every 2 weeks or every month? Because I can just do it on my own.
Right. And I do fall into that category, self-disclosure, that, you know, since I have these tools, I should be able to manage it on my own. And I also go to a therapist weekly, and she's fabulous. And, it takes humility, and it also feels very compassionate to say, I am worth that care. And
Yeah.
I do require that attachment to another human being, that I'm not here just by myself. Um, EMDR definitely needs an attachment for sure. The Enneagram, I think, of course, you can use that solo, but other people are going to help you know your blind spots more quickly than you will.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do. I do want to equip people to be able to handle it individually. That's always the goal, right? So I'm not wanting them to build a dependence upon me. So usually in the work I'm doing, I am wanting them to take full responsibility for their mental health and have the tools. That's always the goal. So probably about maybe somewhere around 40% or even half of the time that I spend is educating people about how they can, it's psychoeducational like that.
Hmm.
So that they can ultimately be helpful to themselves, right?
So what are maybe some like signposts that this would be a good person for you to see, and maybe some warning signs that they might not be the right fit?
That's a great question. So the quickest way to find somebody is going on
Okay.
psychologytoday.com, and you can put in your own filters for that
Mhm.
and put in, yeah, your zip code and areas of expertise. If you found like, oh, you say like, oh, EMDR sounds interesting to me, or
Mhm.
you can put in the parameters for that and specify like I want a certain religious type of therapist, or not. Definitely, like some people purposely search for a not Christian therapist,
Right.
like they want somebody who's, yeah.
Mhm.
um, so that's a quick way to do it other than word of mouth. And then we oftentimes, like, if somebody is not a good fit with me, I'll oftentimes send them a couple of other names. So that's a big part of my practice too, is I want to make sure I can be helpful to you to find the right fit, right?
Yeah.
So but yeah. So if you know a good therapist, they know good therapists
Yeah.
too. So that's probably the best resource, is ask that good therapist where the other ones are.
Mhm.
But so a good therapist will disclose when they don't know about something.
Mhm.
They will tell you, this is my preferred population, my areas of expertise. And then when you're building trust with them, you can, it's nice to notice too, you have the prerogative to build that trust slowly with the therapist. So you don't have to just come in and immediately trust them. It's
Mhm.
also healthy to just kind of test them for a while and see. And that often happens where people don't tell all their stuff at first. They're going to see, what are you going to do with this information over time, and then the harder things will come. So I think knowing I'm the boss of my information, I'm in charge of it, and I can close, like if this were a window with panes in it, I can close one of those at any time. That I don't have to tell them everything
Yeah.
is good. But I really want to reiterate, not giving our power away to the people in power, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's a big deal to know that I'm the one in charge of my information, and I can say, hey, this isn't a good fit for me at any time.
Mhm.
Because I've seen some people get burned that way. They're like, well, this person should be an expert in this, but, well, you don't just want to blindly accept that at face value.
Yeah.
Um, so a good therapist will be, they could apologize. That's a big deal. Right off the bat, you want to see if there's a good fit. Like, is this a warm person? Do
Mhm.
they genuinely like track with me? Are they matching my emotion with me?
Yeah.
Or are they just missing the whole thing? Like, if they're just not getting me, then it's just not a good fit and it's nobody's fault. But
Yeah.
if there's just not good chemistry, that's pretty easy to tell off the bat.
Yeah.
And you also don't want like a passive therapist that just sits and listens. I've heard that so many times and I'm so confused by this. Like a therapist that just sits there and is blank. Like, no, that's weird to me. Like they need to be educating and giving some direction as well. Good therapists usually are seeing a therapist. Usually they've done a lot of work. And it's so funny to watch how I'll go through something and get the resources for myself personally, and then the next week I'll see they'll need those resources right away. It's
Yeah.
really fun to watch that happen.
If somebody is considering going to therapy and they kind of are getting a better idea of what to expect and what to look for, first, what would you suggest for frequency? And second, maybe any disclaimers for what the experience will be like and how to not, I don't want to use the word cope, but
Right.
for lack of a
Sure.
better term, how to cope with that process.
Right. So it is, I traditionally see people once a week
Hmm.
right off the bat to really get to know them and get down to the bottom of like what was disturbing them enough to bring them in the first place. And then we have that ongoing conversation about, okay, well, when they start saying things like, hey, I'm doing really well, then we'll have that conversation about spacing it out
Right.
more. And then, of course, that therapist relationship just stays there, and people, I'm just here for them as needed, as eventually, right?
Right.
So you do kind of plan to be weekly at the beginning, and then it goes out to every other week, usually after a few weeks. The other thing, it does make you feel raw and it's fatiguing. So I think taking a break after a therapy session and going and resting and really nourishing yourself is important. And knowing that I'm not going to necessarily feel really good after this therapy session. So some people will come in and they'll say, I thought I felt happy and then I came in, you
Yeah.
know, and then it was like a buzzkill.
Yeah.
But I just tell them, when you unpack things, you are going to feel disturbed about them and you're going to grieve them. But also, we can kind of contain that. So it's been helpful to see people who can get pretty um, that are comfortable with the pain and can get deep, know that it might be good to put parameters on how long you want to feel those feels and then do another action
Mm.
instead of staying in that therapy place all the time. So
Yeah.
I think some clients have thought, if I come in and I unpack everything, I'm just going to feel, have to perseverate on that a lot.
Mm.
But I think there's a gift to coming in and handling it for an hour
Yeah.
and then maybe recovering from it. And then you're going to have that time reserved for that again, along with journaling and the other pieces.
Yeah. Beth, I really appreciate your time. I think that I know from a friend of mine that is a client of yours that you're an incredible therapist and that you have changed a lot of people's lives. And I know that we've talked at staff meetings how fortunate we are to have several different people at St. Thomas that are equipped in this way. And we really want people to know that there are people like Beth that are at St. Thomas that are resources. And if are you accepting new clients right now?
I am, and mostly see telehealth folks, but we're going to start seeing in person again in the next
Okay.
couple of weeks.
And they can contact you. Your email is on the website. I'll also link that with
Thank
this
you.
podcast and this video. They can get in touch with you. And there are other therapists also at Stonegate that I'm sure that and like you said earlier, good therapists can recommend other good therapists. If those watching, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to anybody on staff at St. Thomas to talk about therapy as an option if that's something that you're interested in. So I just want to thank you. I think that you're a hero. I think that the work you're doing is really, really important. And I am hopeful that this will help people. And hey, if only one person decides to go to therapy after this, then it will be a success.
Great. Thank you so much. Right.
Hope that you enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend.
It was great talking to you. I look forward to seeing you in person eventually.
Absolutely. Hopefully sooner
Okay.
rather than later.
That's right.
Bye,
Okay. Bye.
Beth. Good to talk to you.
See ya.